I'm not a hiker, so there's got to be a real payoff for me to choose an adventure that involves any kind of walk that's a mile or more. Here are my top 5 European hikes, with details on how to get there, how hard they are, and what you'll see. Which of these belong on your bucket list? We've made 10 trips to Europe over the last decade. We've been on dozens of outings all over the continent, but only a handful that could be considered a destination hike. This map shows the location of my 5 favorites. Let's start with the easiest and work our way to the hardest. First up is the walk in the park, which could be taken both literally and figuratively. Lucca is a delightful Renaissance-era Italian city. The city took the ancient walls, widened them with dirt to create literally a donut-shaped park that surrounds the old town, with ramp access at several points. It's the second largest Renaissance-era city with an intact wall. One circuit of the walls is 4.2 kilometers, or about 2.5 miles. If you want to walk that's all about the journey, not the destination, then this is the one for you. Looking out, you're going to see sweeping views of the Italian countryside, particularly in the fall when I walked. Looking in, you'll see beautiful architecture, close-up views of gardens, and the range of Italian living. Walking the path itself is like an all-day passeggiata experience. There'll be families and singles, lovers, loners, people exercising, people relaxing. There's plenty of shade or sun depending on your preference. There'll be buskers there to entertain you with music. Playgrounds and historical landmarks alike share the real estate. And when you've completed the circuit, you can descend into the city for a stop at a very interesting cathedral and a piazza and a delightful alfresco meal in multiple locations. For me, this is the quintessential place to experience the sweet life within Italy. It was a wonderful day's adventure and my favorite easy hike. So how do you get there? Cruise ships sometimes have excursions that go to Lucca. The best option besides that is by train, which is what I did. Our cruise ship stopped in Livorno. From there, I took a taxi to the train station, just a few euros and a short ride. An initial 20-minute train ride brought me to Pisa. From Pisa, it's another 30 minutes to Lucca. Trains run several times an hour, so it took me somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half to get to Lucca from the ship. From the train station at Lucca, it's an easy walk to the wall. I reversed the process to return. On the more detailed version of this walk, I'm going to explain an issue I had returning. I took the wrong train and how I overcame it. Okay, you ready for difficulty level 2? The walls of Dubrovnik. Like that right there. This might sound like the same thing in a different location, but it's totally different. Old Town Dubrovnik has walls that look exactly like the medieval castle walls should. Built in the 1400s, reaching heights of 80 feet or 25 meters, the walls are a one-of-a-kind experience. The distance around the walls is shorter, about 2 kilometers or 1.2 miles, but there are more than 1,000 stair steps along the route, sometimes a long series of steps. This is the equivalent of going up and down about 40 flights of stairs in addition to walk the distance walked. And of course, there are many places to stop and take photos along the route. So many people take an hour or 2 to complete the circuit. I've done the wall twice, different experience each time, one time in good weather, one time in windy, blustery conditions. My advice, do it as early in the day as you can so it gets very crowded later in the day. How do you get there? Well, the cruise port is not within easy walking distance of the wall, so you can either catch a tour bus to the city, but we chose a taxi to arrive more quickly before the wall got crowded. So we were one of the first people on the wall. As a tip, when you're done with the wall, a pizza from the restaurant just outside the pile gate is a great option. Okay, you ready for difficulty level 3? How about the Acropolis of Lindos in Greece? About the same elevation change as the Dubrovnik Wall, but a longer walk. On the island of Rhodes, there are two major attractions: the medieval town of Rhodes itself, and this further inland village of Lindos, which sits in the shadow of an impressive Acropolis. The views are breathtaking from the top, and the ruins are well preserved and fascinating. It's about a 2.2-mile round-trip walk with almost a 400-foot elevation gain from the village to the peak. The round-trip journey takes most people an hour or so, plus time to wander the top, and there's some nice vantage points all along the way, so you'll wind up spending well more than an hour. The switchback nature of the trail makes the climb reasonable, and the path is paved. But there's a total sense of accomplishment at the top, because it is a climb. So how do you get there? Most cruise ships will offer bus or small group transport to Lindos, as well as private companies like Rhodes Private Tours, who did this map. It's also accessible by boat, but takes longer. We booked a small group private tour, which also picked up many of the other island sites along the way. You won't regret this adventure. Okay, now we're ramping up the energy level. We're at level 4. We pick up what some people would call the real hikes. Cinque Terre is a collection of 5 small fishing villages along the Ligurian coast of northwest Italy. It's sometimes called the Italian Riviera. Ranging from about 500 to 1,500 residents, these 5 scenic villages attract upwards of 2.5 million visitors a year. A train connects all 5 villages, which are generally about 2 miles from each other. A series of trails also connects the village, with side spurs that lead to even more scenic adventures. It's a very popular bucket list item to walk all 4 segments of the trail. The most popular, scenic, and easiest of the routes is called Via Amore, or Lover's Lane, and runs from Riomaggiore to Manarola. Unfortunately, it was closed when we were there. It has been closed for several years following a rock slide, but it's due to reopen in the summer of 2024. I walked the section of the path from Vernazza to Cornelia. The path itself is deemed of moderate difficulty, but it's more difficult in this direction because it's more uphill. The hike is 4 kilometers or about 2.5 miles. As you can see here, it is very uneven with many stairs, and you have to be very careful with your footwork. The most scenic portions are the beginning and the end. In the middle, you can see little of the ocean, and you're typically surrounded by trees. There's a small place to get refreshments about halfway. So how do you get there? It's possible to get to Cinque Terre via train or by tour bus from a cruise port such as La Spezia or Livorno. In fact, most of the visitors to the area come from cruise ships. But there's a lot of logistics involved in getting there, walking 1 or more of the legs, and getting back in time. The better option is to stay either in Cinque Terre or one of the nearby towns. We stayed in an Airbnb in Cornelia, took the train to Vernazza, and then I did the hike back to our lodgings. Be careful of the heat, because you need to stay well hydrated. Okay, level 5 is what almost everyone will agree is a real hike. The Dolomites in northeastern Italy are perhaps the most gorgeous mountains I've ever seen, and they are not accessible via a cruise ship. We reached them by a combination of train and bus from Verona. It was easy to find a new place to explore each of the 5 days we were there, and we could have stayed longer. It's gorgeous. At the end of our stay, I discovered the possibility of a sunrise hike. Decided to do it. It was spectacular, except for one thing. We never saw the sunrise. The fog set in on the morning and blocked the actual sunrise view. It was still a spectacular day with a beauty all of its own. How do you get there? We met our guide in the town of Ordizze at 4:15 a.m. Drove as far as the road would take us, then hiked to the top of the mountain by flashlight, mostly over open terrain. On the way back, we stopped for breakfast at a mountain hut. In all, it was a 6-kilometer or about 3.5-mile hike that took 5 hours from town back to town. At age 70, I was probably 20 years older than the next oldest person, but I was able to keep up, and my goal was not to hold up the group so that we missed the sunrise. It was all very good. If it had been normal weather and it would have been spectacular, I wouldn't hesitate to try this again. If you like this content and other travel information, particularly about cruising, please consider subscribing to our channel. It costs nothing and it really helps our channel. If you have suggestions about any other places to hike in Europe that you've found exciting, please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, good hiking, safe travels.